All right, so get this. What if I told you that one of the most dangerous ideas out there is hiding in plain sight, right inside how we think about time itself? Today, we're going to dig into a whole new way of thinking about governance that takes this danger head on. And honestly, it could change everything about how we see progress, politics, even our own lives.
Okay, so where do we start? Well, our journey kicks off with an idea that's, kind of simple, but also really unsettling. It's all about how our ideas of the past and the future aren't just thoughts. They're powerful tools. And like any tool, they can build things up or they can tear them right down. Which brings us to a really uncomfortable question, right? Can our ideas about the past and the future actually be weaponized? The source material we're looking at today says absolutely yes. The argument is that when we start treating these concepts as rock-solid realities, well, they can be twisted to justify pretty much anything.
And this is the absolute core of it. The main insight is this quote: "The more real the past and future are treated, the more expendable the present becomes." Just let that sink in for a second. What it's saying is that when we get obsessed with some perfect golden age in the past or some flawless utopia in the future, the actual suffering of people living right now starts to look like a small, acceptable price to pay. And that's terrifying. So, the big question is, how does this happen? How does the present become expendable? To really get it, we've got to look at the two main ways different cultures have thought about time throughout history.
So you basically have two big camps. On one side, you've got what's called linear cosmic thinking. This is the idea that time is a straight line, an arrow, shooting towards some ultimate destiny. The danger here? It makes it really easy to justify hurting people now for some promised reward way down the line. Then, on the other side, you have eternal cyclic thinking. This is where time is a wheel, always repeating. The risk here is fatalism. The idea that suffering is just part of the cycle, so why even bother trying to stop it?
And here's the kicker. It doesn't matter if you think time is a straight line to paradise or a big old repeating wheel. Both worldviews share the exact same flaw. They can both make the well-being of people living today seem less important. The present always gets sacrificed for something that isn't real, something that isn't here and now.
Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? Is there another way? Well, this framework puts forward a really powerful alternative. It's a new guideline designed specifically to protect the present.
The whole thing is built on a principle called present primacy. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also kind of radical. It says that only present beings, people who are alive right now, and present conditions have moral reality. Now, this doesn't mean the past and future don't matter at all. It just means their moral importance can never outweigh the well-being of people who are alive here today.
So, this guideline stands on three main pillars. First, present primacy, which we just talked about. Second, the idea that the past and future are instrumental. Think of them as tools in our toolbox for learning and planning. They're not a set of divine commands. And third is something called soft cyclic awareness. This just means we recognize that, patterns tend to repeat themselves, but we don't treat them like some inescapable destiny.
And this shift in thinking is absolutely huge. Suddenly, history becomes a library you can learn from, not a law book you have to obey. The future becomes a range of possibilities you can shape, not a prophecy you have to fulfill. They are there to inform us, not to command us. And they never, ever get to be an excuse for harming people in the here and now.
Okay, that all sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually turn a philosophy like this into a real concrete model for governance? How do we make this a practical way of running a society?
Well, that brings us to the Present Primary Cyclic Governance Model, or PPCGM for short. It's built on four really practical principles. First, a present harm constraint. Basically, you can't push a policy that hurts people now for some promised benefit later. Simple as that. Second, reversibility. Any big, sweeping decision has to be undoable. You need an exit ramp. Third, short feedback loops. You need to see the results of your actions quickly so you can adjust course if things go wrong. And fourth, narrative modesty. This means dropping the grand heroic missions and focusing on what's actually possible and humane.
And, what this model rejects is just as important as what it promotes. It's a big no to politics built on some grand destiny. A no to apocalyptic ideas that want to burn everything down to start over. It's a hard pass on so-called sacrificial progress. And it completely rejects those mythic stories about restoring some lost golden age, because these are the exact ideas that have always been used to make the present expendable.
So what's the result of all this? Well, progress starts to look a whole lot different. It's not about these giant, heroic leaps forward or catastrophic revolutions anymore. Instead, it becomes a steady, careful process. It's incremental. It's correctable. And above all, it's humane. It's just about making things a little bit better, step by step, for the people who are actually here today.
So why does any of this matter? Why should you care? Because this isn't just some abstract philosophical game. This represents a really fundamental shift in how we think about what we're all trying to achieve together as a society.
The goal is no longer this epic march towards some perfect destiny way off in the distance. Instead, the goal becomes something much more grounded, the managed continuity of present well-being. The whole point isn't to arrive at some utopia one day. The point is to make the journey itself sustainable and decent for everyone over and over again.
And this quote, man, it just perfectly sums up the entire philosophy. It's this beautiful balancing act. Govern and believe as if only present beings are real, while recognizing that unmanaged strain returns in cycles. You see what it's doing? You act with this intense moral urgency for the now, for today, but you plan with the wisdom of knowing that history has patterns and problems will come back around if you don't manage them.
But let's be super clear about something. This model isn't a blueprint for utopia. It's not promising a perfect world. It's actually proposing something way more practical, and maybe even more valuable. It's a set of guardrails, a structural restraint to protect us from our own worst ideological tendencies. It's like a safety barrier on a dangerous road, designed to stop us from driving off the cliff for the sake of some grand idea.
And that really leaves us with one last question to chew on. Just think about it. What could we actually fix today if we just stopped sacrificing the real people living and breathing right now for the sake of imaginary people in some distant, unknowable tomorrow?